The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of amber and crimson. On a quiet stretch of road, just outside the bustling city, the evening air carried a heavy stillness, broken only by the occasional rumble of distant traffic. Beneath a gnarled, half-dead tree stood a young boy, no older than 12, perched on a frayed piece of cardboard. His clothes, tattered and smudged with dirt, hung loosely over his thin frame, and his bare feet, calloused from years of walking on hot asphalt and gravel, pressed against the cool earth. This boy, known simply as Junior, had long stopped counting the days since he lost everything: his parents, his home, and the future that had once seemed so bright. He had been just 6 years old when tragedy struck, ripping away the pillars of his life. His father, a mechanic with dreams of running his own garage, and his mother, a schoolteacher who believed in the transformative power of education, were the foundation of Junior's world. But fate had been cruel. A car accident on a rainy night had taken them both, leaving Junior an orphan. At first, there had been glimmers of hope. Relatives had come forward, offering condolences and temporary shelter. But sympathy had its limits, and when money became tight, Junior was cast aside, left to navigate the world on his own. By the time he turned 9, he was living on the streets, learning to fend for himself with the scraps of knowledge and skills his parents had taught him. Now, at 12, Junior's life revolved around survival. He scavenged for food, did odd jobs for a few coins, and slept wherever he could find shelter. Yet, beneath the grime and weariness, there was a spark of determination, a quiet resilience that refused to let him give up. As Junior sat under the tree, fiddling with a rusted spanner he had found in a junkyard, the sound of screeching brakes jolted him from his thoughts. A sleek black car rolled to a halt just a few feet away, its front left tire sagging visibly. The vehicle was a stark contrast to the surrounding landscape. Its glossy exterior and tinted windows screamed wealth and privilege, a world far removed from Junior's reality. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man who looked as though he belonged on the cover of a business magazine. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his tailored navy suit and polished leather shoes unmarred by the dust and grime of the roadside. His neatly trimmed salt and pepper hair and sharp features radiated authority, but his furrowed brow betrayed his frustration. The man crouched by the flat tire, examining it with a scowl before pulling out his smartphone. He tapped the screen repeatedly, then muttered under his breath, "No signal." "Perfect." Junior watched from a distance, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. Years of living on the streets had taught him to read people, and he could see the frustration in the man's posture. But more importantly, he saw an opportunity, not to beg, but to prove his worth. Clutching the spanner, Junior rose to his feet and approached cautiously. His heart pounded as he crossed the small distance to the car. The man straightened and turned, his piercing gaze landing on the boy. For a moment, neither spoke. "Excuse me, sir," Junior said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. The man's eyes narrowed slightly as he took in the boy's ragged appearance. "Yes? What do you want?" His tone was curt but not unkind. I can help you fix your tire," Junior offered, holding up the spanner as if it were a badge of honor. The man raised an eyebrow, skepticism clear in his expression. "You? A kid?" Junior nodded earnestly. "Yes, sir. My dad was a mechanic. He taught me how to change tires before he passed away. I can do it. Please let me help." The man glanced down at the boy's bare feet and then at the spanner in his small hands. For a moment, he seemed to weigh his options. The sun was sinking fast, and the road was growing quieter with each passing minute. Finally, he sighed and stepped aside. "All right, but be careful. This car is worth more than you can imagine." Junior's lips curved into a small smile as he knelt beside the flat tire. His hands moved with practiced ease, loosening the lug nuts and carefully removing the damaged tire. The man watched, his initial doubt giving way to quiet amazement as the boy worked efficiently, his movements precise and confident. As Junior worked, he spoke softly, almost to himself. My dad used to say that knowing how to fix things is like having a superpower. You can save a day, even if it's just for one person. The man's expression softened as he listened. For the first time, he noticed the determination in the boy's eyes, the kind of resolve that came from enduring hardships far beyond his years. Within minutes, the spare tire was in place, and Junior stood, brushing the dust from his hands. "All done, sir," he said, stepping back to admire his work. The man inspected the tire, nodding in approval. "You did a good job," he said, pulling out his wallet. He handed Junior a crisp $50 bill. "Here, for your trouble." Junior stared at the money, his heart sinking slightly. It wasn't about the money. It was about the chance to prove himself to be more than just a homeless kid. Slowly, he shook his head. "Thank you, sir, but I didn't do it for money. I just wanted to help." The man paused, taken aback by the boy's response. A flicker of admiration crossed his face as he studied Junior more closely. There was something about him, something raw and genuine. "What's your name, kid?" the man asked. "Junior," he replied. "Well, Junior," the man said, extending his hand, "I'm Mr. Harrison, and I think we need to talk." Junior hesitated for a moment before shaking the man's hand. Mr. Harrison's grip was firm but warm, and it felt strange to Junior, who was more accustomed to people brushing him aside without a second glance. "Why don't you come with me for a bit?" Mr. Harrison asked, gesturing toward the car. "I'd like to hear more about you." Junior's instincts screamed caution. Trusting strangers wasn't something he could afford to do, but there was something different about Mr. Harrison. The man didn't seem threatening. If anything, he seemed genuinely curious. I don't know," Junior said, taking a step back. "I usually stay around here. It's where I sleep." Mr. Harrison frowned. "You mean to tell me you live on the streets?" Junior nodded silently. "That won't do," Mr. Harrison said, shaking his head. "You're too smart to be out here. How about this? You ride with me into town. I'll buy you a meal and we'll talk. If you're uncomfortable, I'll bring you right back here. Deal." The mention of food made Junior's stomach growl audibly, and he felt his face flush with embarrassment. It had been over a day since his last proper meal, a dry piece of bread someone had thrown out. Reluctantly, he nodded. "All right, sir," Junior said, "but just for a meal." "Fair enough," Mr. Harrison replied, smiling. He opened the passenger door for Junior, who climbed in cautiously, his small hands gripping the edges of the leather seat as if it might crumble beneath him. The car's interior smelled of rich leather and faint cologne. Junior had never been in a car like this before, and he couldn't help but marvel at the smooth dashboard and shiny controls. As they drove, the city lights began to flicker in the distance, casting a warm glow over the approaching skyline. "So, Junior," Mr. Harrison began, keeping his eyes on the road, "tell me more about yourself. Where are your parents?" Junior looked down at his lap, fiddling with the hem of his shirt. "They're gone. Both of them. My dad died in a car accident when I was 6, and my mom, she got sick not long after. Cancer, they said." Mr. Harrison's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that. What about other family? Aunts, uncles, anyone?" Junior shrugged. "They didn't want me. Said they couldn't afford another mouth to feed. So I ended up here on the streets." The car fell silent for a moment, the hum of the engine filling the void. Mr. Harrison glanced at Junior, his heart sinking. He had worked hard to build his wealth, but stories like Junior's reminded him how fragile life could be. "You've been through a lot," Mr. Harrison said softly. "More than most kids your age should ever have to face." Junior didn't respond. He stared out the window, watching as the neon lights of restaurants and stores whizzed by. The car eventually pulled up to a cozy diner with bright red booths and a glowing open sign in the window. "Come on," Mr. Harrison said, stepping out of the car. Junior followed, his bare feet making soft pats against the pavement. Inside, the smell of fried food and fresh coffee enveloped him, making his stomach ache with hunger. Order whatever you want, Mr. Harrison said as they slid into a booth. Junior hesitated, scanning the menu with wide eyes. The prices looked astronomical compared to the scraps he usually scavenged, but Mr. Harrison's reassuring nod gave him the courage to pick a hearty meal, a burger, fries, and a milkshake. As they waited for the food, Mr. Harrison leaned forward. Junior, have you ever thought about going back to school? Junior's eyes widened. School? I can't. I don't have money, and even if I did, who would take care of me? What if someone did? Mr. Harrison asked. What if you had a home, clothes, food, everything you need to focus on your education? Junior stared at him. The words too good to be true. Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me. Mr. Harrison smiled faintly. Because everyone deserves a chance, Junior. And I see something in you, something worth investing in. The food arrived then, momentarily derailing the conversation. Junior ate slowly at first, savoring each bite. But hunger soon took over, and he finished his meal in record time. As they left the diner, Junior felt a strange mix of hope and fear bubbling inside him. Could this really be the turning point in his life, or was it just another cruel twist of fate? Let's go to my place, Mr. Harrison said as they climbed back into the car. I have a spare room you can stay in for now. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what's next. Junior didn't reply, but as the car sped toward the glittering city, a small part of him dared to believe that his life might finally change for the better. The drive to Mr. Harrison's home was quiet, save for the soft hum of the car engine. Junior clutched his spanner tightly, as if it were the only thing tethering him to reality. He couldn't bring himself to trust this sudden act of kindness. It seemed too good to be true. When they arrived, Junior's jaw dropped. Mr. Harrison's house wasn't just a home. It was a mansion. The sprawling property sat atop a hill, surrounded by well-manicured lawns and a driveway large enough to fit several cars. Warm light spilled from the grand windows, illuminating the modern design of the building. Welcome, Mr. Harrison said, gesturing for Junior to follow him inside. Junior hesitated at the front door, his feet frozen in place. Are you sure I'm allowed in here? Mr. Harrison turned, his expression softening. This is your home now, Junior. Come on. The inside of the house was even more breathtaking. The polished floors gleamed under soft lighting, and the air smelled faintly of lavender. Junior felt out of place, like a smudge on an otherwise perfect canvas. Let me show you your room, Mr. Harrison said, leading Junior up a wide staircase. The room was modest compared to the rest of the house, but still far more than Junior had ever imagined for himself. A comfortable bed with clean sheets, a desk, and a wardrobe stood waiting for him. There was even a small bookshelf with a few children's novels. Junior sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands over the soft fabric of the blanket. I've never had a room like this, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You deserve it, Mr. Harrison said. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about school and everything else. The first few weeks were overwhelming for Junior. He wasn't used to regular meals, clean clothes, or a soft bed. The structured routine Mr. Harrison imposed, waking up early, eating balanced meals, and studying, was both comforting and intimidating. Junior had always been a quick learner, and it showed when Mr. Harrison hired a private tutor to prepare him for school. Despite years of missed education, Junior quickly caught up, impressing both the tutor and Mr. Harrison with his determination. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. At night, Junior often lay awake, haunted by memories of his parents and the harsh life he had endured on the streets. He couldn't shake the feeling that this newfound life was temporary, that at any moment it could all be taken away. Mr. Harrison noticed the boy's unease. One evening, he sat down with Junior in the living room. You don't trust this, do you? He asked gently. Junior looked down at his hands. I want to, but nothing good ever lasts for me. Mr. Harrison sighed. Junior, I can't replace what you've lost, but I can promise you this. I won't abandon you. You're part of my family now." The words struck a chord in Junior. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. Mr. Harrison wasn't a man who made decisions lightly. As the CEO of a successful tech company, he had spent decades building his fortune through careful planning and calculated risks. But something about Junior had stirred a part of him he thought he had buried long ago. Years earlier, Mr. Harrison had lost his wife and unborn child in a tragic accident. The grief had consumed him, driving him to bury himself in work. But meeting Junior had reopened old wounds, and with them, the desire to make a difference. "He reminds me of what I could have had," Mr. Harrison confided to his close friend and lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, over lunch one day. "He's bright, resourceful, and resilient. I see so much potential in him." "Then you're doing the right thing," Mr. Jacobs said. "Giving him a chance at a better life is the best way to honor what you've lost." 5 years later, Junior stood on the stage of his high school graduation, dressed in a crisp suit and clutching his diploma. The crowd erupted into applause as he delivered his valedictorian speech, his voice steady and confident. "I stand here today because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," Junior said, his eyes finding Mr. Harrison in the audience. He didn't see a homeless boy. He saw potential. "And for that, I am forever grateful." Mr. Harrison's chest swelled with pride as he watched Junior accept his awards. The boy he had met on a dusty roadside had grown into a remarkable young man with a bright future ahead of him. After the ceremony, Junior walked over to Mr. Harrison, his smile radiant. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, hugging the man who had become a father to him. Mr. Harrison placed a hand on Junior's shoulder. "You did the hard work, Junior. I just gave you the chance to shine." As they walked toward the car, Junior glanced at the sky, silently thanking his parents for watching over him. He knew his journey was far from over, but with Mr. Harrison by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in years, Junior felt truly at home. Support us by subscribing to our channel for more.